Imagine being called to do something you never wanted to do, something so daunting, so intimidating that you'd rather run in the opposite direction. Now picture not just the fear of failure, but the feeling that you might be running from something bigger than yourself, something that could change your life and the lives of others forever. This was the reality for Jonah, a man tasked with a mission that seemed impossible, a mission he was determined to avoid. But what if the very thing we run from is the thing we were meant to face all along? What if stepping into that challenge, no matter how overwhelming it seems, is the key to not just our growth, but the transformation of everything around us? Jonah's journey teaches us that we cannot escape our purpose, no matter how hard we try. It's not just a personal calling. It's a mission that holds the power to impact others, to heal, to restore. The question is, will we resist? Or will we rise to meet the purpose that awaits us, knowing that embracing it might just be the very thing that saves us and those we are meant to serve? Purpose is something we all feel deep down, yet it can sometimes feel like an elusive force, something we can't quite grasp or fully understand. We might question why we're here or struggle with the idea of being bound to a certain path. In the story of Jonah, we see this struggle unfold in a very real way. Jonah tries to escape from his calling, believing that he can outrun the purpose set before him. But Jonah's journey teaches us an undeniable truth. You can't escape your purpose. When Jonah was called by God to go to Nineveh, a city notorious for its wickedness, Jonah didn't see it as an opportunity to fulfill his purpose. Instead, he viewed it as a burden, a daunting task that he felt he wasn't capable of undertaking. His fear of the challenge led him to flee, boarding a ship to the farthest point he could think of to avoid the call. Jonah didn't think he could handle what was being asked of him, and in his mind, running away was the only way to avoid failure, discomfort, and the fear of facing an uncertain future. But in his flight, Jonah discovered that you cannot outrun what's already part of your destiny. Jonah's attempt to escape serves as a mirror to how we often react to our own calling. How many times have we looked at our responsibilities, our dreams, or the life we're meant to live and decided that it's too much to handle? The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, or simply the overwhelming nature of the task can make us run in the opposite direction, thinking that the further we go, the less we will have to confront it. In our personal lives, we might avoid pursuing what we truly feel passionate about, or we might resist taking on the role we're destined for, because it's easier to ignore it than to face the challenges it brings. It's human nature to try to avoid discomfort, to seek out the path of least resistance. But like Jonah, we may find that no matter how far we run, we can't escape the pull of our purpose. The first lesson here is that purpose doesn't expire or go away just because we ignore it. Jonah's flight didn't eliminate the calling he was given. In fact, it only intensified the consequences of avoiding it. As Jonah ran, a storm arose, threatening the very ship he was on. His avoidance of his purpose didn't just affect him, it impacted everyone around him. The sailors on the ship were caught in the turmoil because of his decision to flee. Our own avoidance of purpose can have a ripple effect, impacting not just ourselves, but the lives of those around us, even in ways we don't fully understand. Eventually, Jonah had to come to terms with the fact that his purpose was inescapable. The storm didn't calm until he accepted the responsibility of his calling, and when he finally decided to face it, things began to shift. He realized that no matter where he went or how hard he tried, he could not run from the truth of who he was meant to be. This moment of acceptance was transformative for Jonah. He understood that the key to peace and resolution wasn't in running away from his purpose, but in embracing it. The same is true for all of us. No matter how far we run or how much we try to avoid the calling in our lives, we will eventually find that it's waiting for us, ready to meet us where we are. Our purpose doesn't disappear just because we turn our backs on it. If anything, the more we resist it, the more difficult our journey becomes. Purpose is part of who we are, woven into the fabric of our being, and it follows us wherever we go. Our job is not to avoid it, but to trust that it will guide us, even through the storms. Jonah's story teaches us that no matter how much we try to escape or how much fear we carry, our purpose has a way of finding us. And when it does, it brings with it the possibility of transformation, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. The sooner we realize that we can't escape our purpose, the sooner we can step into the life we are meant to lead. So often, when we are faced with the reality of our purpose, it's natural to resist. There's something about the unknown, something about the responsibility that accompanies the calling that makes us hesitate. Jonah's story is a powerful reminder of how resistance is an instinct we all experience when faced with something greater than ourselves. The reluctance to take on the path laid before us is not only a human trait, it's a common response to stepping into something that feels larger than what we believe we're capable of handling. For Jonah, the task given to him by God was clear, but the fear of failure, judgment, and the immense challenge ahead led him to avoid it entirely. This resistance to purpose, however, doesn't come from a place of weakness or inadequacy. Rather, it comes from a place of self-preservation and the perceived risk of stepping into the unknown. Jonah was called to deliver a message of repentance to the people of Nineveh, a city notorious for its violence and immorality. In Jonah's mind, the challenge was insurmountable. How could he, a single individual, speak to an entire city that was corrupt and violent, convincing them to change their ways? The task seemed impossible, and the fear of rejection was likely overwhelming. After all, if he failed, the consequences would fall squarely on his shoulders. Not only that, but Jonah likely questioned whether his efforts would make any difference at all. It's easy to understand why Jonah would try to flee from such a daunting task. But in doing so, he demonstrated how fear can often prevent us from stepping into the roles we are meant to play. This fear is universal. How many of us have faced a similar moment in life where we've been presented with an opportunity that challenges us to grow, to make an impact, or to change our direction, only to be paralyzed by the fear of failure? It's a common reaction to doubt ourselves, to question our abilities, and to wonder if we are truly capable of what's being asked of us. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the challenge, and the fear of judgment can be so overwhelming that we decide to turn the other way. We begin to make excuses, telling ourselves that we aren't ready, or that it's too risky to take such a leap. Jonah's decision to run is a reflection of how we sometimes cope with our fears. Instead of confronting what scares us, we choose to avoid it. We find distractions. We come up with reasons to delay, or we actively pursue something that feels safer, even though we know deep down that it isn't where we are truly meant to be. This avoidance isn't necessarily a reflection of cowardice or weakness. Often, it stems from a deep-seated belief that we're not good enough, that we don't have what it takes, or that the task before us is simply too much to handle. We think that running from our purpose will protect us from the disappointment of failure. However, what Jonah's journey reveals is that avoidance only prolongs the inevitable. The storm that arose on the ship wasn't just a random event. It was a consequence of Jonah's decision to resist. The discomfort and chaos he experienced didn't disappear by fleeing. Instead, it followed him. Resistance doesn't protect us from hardship. In fact, it often creates more problems and delays the growth that comes from embracing our challenges head-on. The fear Jonah felt was valid, as is the fear that many of us feel when faced with something daunting. But it's in the midst of that fear that growth occurs. The very act of resisting the call often means that we're on the brink of something powerful, something transformative. The struggle we face in overcoming our fear is part of the process of stepping into our purpose. It's in pushing through the discomfort, the self-doubt, and the fear of rejection that we often find the courage and strength we didn't know we had. The growth doesn't come in avoiding the challenge, but in confronting it, in allowing ourselves to feel the fear and doing it anyway. Jonah's resistance to his purpose mirrors what we all go through when we face challenges that test our limits. But the key to moving beyond that fear is in understanding that the resistance itself is a part of the journey. The fear of the task will always be there, but it's how we choose to face it that determines whether we move forward or continue to run. Embracing our purpose requires us to stop avoiding what scares us and start leaning into it, trusting that the journey, no matter how difficult, will bring us the growth and transformation we need. When we try to avoid our purpose, we often fail to recognize that it isn't just a personal choice. It comes with consequences that ripple outward, affecting not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us. Jonah's story makes this reality impossible to ignore. As he ran from his calling, He didn't just escape from his own responsibility, he put the lives of others at risk. The storm that arose on the ship wasn't a random natural occurrence. It was a direct result of Jonah's decision to flee. The other sailors on the ship, innocent and unaware of Jonah's disobedience, found themselves caught in the chaos because of his actions. This reflects a deeper truth. Avoiding our purpose doesn't just cause personal harm, it has the potential to create a ripple effect that touches the lives of others in ways we might not initially understand. Jonah's decision to avoid his calling by fleeing to Tarshish seemed like a personal choice, but the storm that engulfed the ship was proof that personal decisions often affect the larger world. The sailors, who had nothing to do with Jonah's disobedience, were thrust into a dangerous situation that threatened their lives. The more Jonah resisted his purpose, the more dangerous and uncontrollable the situation became. What began as one man's avoidance of responsibility turned into a crisis for everyone involved. When we refuse to confront our purpose, the consequences don't just stay contained within ourselves, they spread out, influencing those around us, sometimes in ways we can't predict. In our own lives, we might think that avoiding our responsibilities, dreams, or calls to action is something that only impacts us. We might reason that it's our life, our choice, and we are free to do as we please. However, the reality is far more complex. Every action, every decision creates a ripple effect. Just like Jonah's flight from his purpose caused a storm that endangered the sailors, our decisions, whether to step into our calling or run from it, affect others in profound ways. The people in our lives, those who look to us for guidance, inspiration, or support, are impacted by our choices. Our hesitations, our reluctance to follow through with our purpose, can leave them stranded in their own storms. For example, when we resist stepping into leadership roles, whether in our families, communities, or workplaces, we may unintentionally prevent others from stepping into their own potential. By avoiding the calling that seems too daunting, we could be holding back those who are waiting for us to lead, inspire, or make a move. Our hesitation could keep others stuck, unsure of how to proceed themselves. It's not just about us, as we often think it is. It's about the collective journey. Just as Jonah's inaction disrupted the lives of those around him, our reluctance to fulfill our purpose can have unintended consequences that reach far beyond ourselves. Furthermore, avoiding our purpose can cause a deep sense of dissatisfaction in our own lives. The chaos Jonah faced in the storm wasn't just external, it was internal as well. As he tried to flee from his calling, his soul was torn between the pull of his purpose and his desire to escape the responsibility. This internal conflict created a storm of its own, a feeling of unrest and discomfort that couldn't be avoided. Similarly, when we avoid our purpose, we experience an inner dissonance, a sense that something is missing or off. We might try to ignore it, distract ourselves, or convince ourselves that we're content with where we are, but deep down we know that the storm is brewing. Our decisions to avoid our calling don't just affect our external circumstances, they take a toll on our peace of mind and emotional well-being. Eventually, Jonah had to face the consequences of his actions. The storm didn't calm until he admitted his fault and accepted the responsibility of his purpose. This moment of acceptance, though difficult, was the key to resolving the crisis, both for Jonah and the sailors. When we finally confront our purpose, we release not just ourselves but those around us from the turmoil created by our avoidance. The storm doesn't stop until we take responsibility for the role we are meant to play. And this can bring a sense of peace, not only within ourselves, but within the wider community that is affected by our choices. When we resist our purpose, we might think we are avoiding harm or discomfort, but the truth is that the harm often comes not from facing our purpose, but from running from it. The consequences of avoiding our calling don't just show up in our personal struggles. They show up in the ways our decisions affect others, creating storms in their lives too. Embracing our purpose not only brings us peace and fulfillment, but also helps to calm the storms in the lives of those who are touched by our journey. The story of Jonah is a powerful reminder that growth often comes through struggle. When Jonah was thrown into the sea and swallowed by the great fish, it may have seemed like the end of the line for him, but this was, in fact, the beginning of a transformation. The struggle that Jonah faced in the belly of the fish was not a punishment, but rather a necessary part of his growth, a process that would prepare him for the purpose he had been running from. It's easy to see struggle as something to avoid, something that signals failure or hardship, but it's often in these very moments, when we face adversity head-on, that we experience the greatest growth. Jonah's journey shows us that purpose is often realized through the trials we face, and it's the struggle itself that shapes us into the people we need to become. When we find ourselves in a difficult situation, it can feel overwhelming. The pressures of life, the weight of responsibility, and the uncertainty of what lies ahead can make us feel like we're drowning. Jonah, in the belly of the fish, likely felt isolated and hopeless. He was trapped, physically and mentally, with no clear way out. This was a moment where everything seemed lost, but what Jonah didn't know was that this moment of seeming despair was exactly where he needed to be in order to grow. It was in the darkness of that fish's belly that Jonah's heart began to change. He realized that his avoidance had led him into this situation, but it was also through this struggle that he would come to understand the depth of his purpose. This is a critical point in understanding how growth works. We don't always grow in the easy moments. We don't always become who we are meant to be when life is smooth sailing. It's when we face challenges, when we are forced to confront the things we fear or resist, that we begin to grow. Jonah's struggle wasn't just a physical one. It was a spiritual and emotional one as well. His time inside the fish was a period of reflection and reckoning, where he began to understand not only the importance of his purpose, but also the role he was meant to play in the world. Struggles like these often require us to look inward, to question our motives, and to come to terms with our own weaknesses and strengths. It's through this process of self-examination that growth begins. The growth Jonah experienced was not immediate, nor was it easy. It took time. The fish didn't spit Jonah out the moment he realized his purpose. Instead, he had to sit with his discomfort, face his fears, and accept the responsibility of his calling. The growth that Jonah went through inside the fish wasn't about physical strength or survival. It was about spiritual renewal. It was a time of transformation where Jonah came to understand the importance of his purpose and the power of embracing it, even when it seemed impossible. The struggle Jonah faced in the belly of the fish was a refining moment where he was broken down and rebuilt, stronger and more committed to his purpose. In our own lives, we often experience moments where we feel trapped, as though we are stuck in the belly of a fish. It might be a job we don't like, a relationship that's draining, or a situation that feels hopeless. During these times, it's easy to want to give up, to surrender to the circumstances, and to believe that this is all life has for us. But the truth is that these moments of struggle are often the very spaces where our growth is taking place. It is through these struggles that we are shaped, that we discover our true strength, and that we learn to rise above our circumstances. Just like Jonah, we are not meant to stay in the belly of the fish forever. The struggle is not the end. It's the process that prepares us for the next step in our journey. Growth through struggle doesn't mean that we are free from pain or difficulty. It means that through those challenges, we find something deeper within ourselves. The growth that comes from struggle isn't always visible immediately, but over time, it reveals itself in the way we handle future challenges, in the way we step into our purpose with more confidence, and in the way we see the world differently. Struggles have the power to refine us, to teach us patience, resilience, and perseverance. When we embrace these struggles instead of running from them, we open ourselves to the growth that they bring. Jonah's experience in the fish was not just about surviving a bad situation. It was about transforming through that situation. It was about understanding that sometimes it's in the most uncomfortable places that we find our purpose and grow into the person we were always meant to be. This transformation is not always easy or immediate, but it is necessary. Without the struggle, Jonah wouldn't have had the clarity he needed to fulfill his purpose. Likewise, without our struggles, we wouldn't have the strength or wisdom required to meet the challenges ahead. Growth through struggle is a process, but it is one that shapes us, refines us, and prepares us to step into the future we are meant to embrace. Jonah's journey highlights a truth that is central to understanding our own purpose. It is not just about us. Our purpose, no matter how personal or seemingly isolated it may feel, always has a broader impact. When Jonah finally embraced his calling and went to Nineveh, the transformation that took place wasn't limited to Jonah alone. It extended to the people of Nineveh as well. Jonah's purpose was never just to fulfill his own destiny. It was to bring change, to inspire repentance, and to create a shift in a society that had lost its way. His reluctance to step into this role delayed the very impact he was meant to have. But once he accepted his purpose, the results were profound. When Jonah arrived in Nineveh, he delivered a message of repentance, urging the people to turn from their wicked ways or face destruction. This wasn't a message they wanted to hear. Nineveh was a powerful and proud city, known for its violence and moral corruption. But when Jonah stepped into his purpose, when he delivered the message with courage and commitment, something incredible happened. The people listened. From the king to the commoners, they heeded Jonah's warning, repented, and changed their ways. The city was saved from destruction, not because of Jonah's strength or his desire, but because he fulfilled his purpose and allowed it to impact others. This is the essence of why we can't escape our purpose. The reason we are called to do what we are meant to do is because it serves a higher purpose, often for the benefit of others. Our lives are interconnected, and our actions have a ripple effect that reaches far beyond our immediate circle. When we avoid our calling, we are not only depriving ourselves of growth and fulfillment, but we are also holding back the potential positive impact we could have on the world around us. Jonah's success in Nineveh was not just his victory, it was the city's victory. It was a collective turning point that impacted the lives of countless people. The idea that purpose is meant to lead to impact is not always easy to accept, especially when we feel unsure of our abilities or lack confidence in the difference we can make. We may look at the scope of the task ahead and feel overwhelmed, just as Jonah did when he first received his calling. How could one person, in the face of such overwhelming odds, change an entire city? But the truth is, the purpose we are given isn't about us acting alone. It's about being a vessel through which something larger than ourselves can move. Jonah's purpose wasn't to save Nineveh on his own. His purpose was simply to speak the words that would lead to change. It was the people's willingness to listen, to act on the message, that allowed the transformation to take place. When we step into our own purpose, we often have a limited view of what that purpose is meant to achieve. We might think it's about us achieving success or reaching a personal milestone. But the real impact comes when we recognize that our purpose is meant to serve a greater good. Whether we are leading a team, raising children, creating art, or contributing to our communities, the purpose we serve always extends beyond our own lives. Just as Jonah's message brought change to a whole city, our actions, whether big or small, have the power to bring transformation to the world around us. This doesn't mean that every step we take will be met with immediate success, or that every attempt will lead to a grand outcome. But it does mean that every time we act in alignment with our purpose, we create the possibility for change, whether we see it immediately or not. Jonah had no idea what would happen when he delivered the message to Nineveh. But by stepping into his role, he created a moment of transformation that impacted generations. The impact of our actions, even when it feels small or insignificant, always carries the potential for something greater. The realization that our purpose leads to impact is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that we are part of something larger than ourselves, that the work we do, no matter how seemingly inconsequential, has a ripple effect that can change lives. It shifts our perspective from focusing solely on our own journey to understanding that our lives are interconnected with those around us, and through our actions we can make a difference in ways we may never fully comprehend. Just as Jonah's message led to the salvation of Nineveh, our purpose is meant to contribute to the world in ways that transcend our immediate vision. It's a reminder that we can't escape our purpose, not just because it's meant for us, but because it's meant for others too. When Jonah finally accepted his purpose and faced the people of Nineveh, the city was transformed. This moment reveals a powerful truth. Embracing our purpose can bring about redemption, healing, and restoration, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. The moment Jonah chose to stop running from his calling, to stop resisting and avoiding it, he became a catalyst for change. This transformation wasn't just about Jonah doing his part. It was about how his willingness to step into his purpose created a powerful shift in an entire community. The people of Nineveh, once steeped in sin and corruption, turned from their ways in response to Jonah's message, showing that when we step into our calling, we have the potential to spark profound change in others. One of the most important elements of Jonah's story is that the message he delivered wasn't one of condemnation, it was one of redemption. Jonah's purpose wasn't to judge or punish Nineveh, but to give them a chance to change, to turn away from their wrongdoings and choose a different path. When we step into our purpose, it's not about using our power or influence to elevate ourselves or to tear others down. It's about serving as a vessel for transformation, for offering the chance for people, situations, or even entire communities to heal. The purpose we are called to fulfill often extends beyond ourselves. It's about bringing restoration, light, and hope to places where they're needed most. The people of Nineveh were in a place of moral decay, and Jonah's message was their wake-up call. They were given a choice: continue down the path of destruction or turn to repentance and change their ways. And when Jonah faithfully delivered the message, the response was nothing short of miraculous. The entire city, from the king to the common people, humbled themselves, recognized their wrongs, and turned toward a better future. This mass transformation didn't happen because Jonah was perfect or because he was particularly gifted. It happened because Jonah embraced the purpose he had been running from and, by doing so, became an instrument of change. His willingness to confront his fears and step into his role opened the door for the redemption of an entire city. This is where the power of embracing purpose truly lies. It's in our willingness to be part of something larger than ourselves, to recognize that by stepping into our calling, we are giving others the opportunity to transform as well. Jonah could have chosen to stay in his own fear, to run from Nineveh and avoid the uncomfortable task set before him. But in doing so, he would have kept the people of Nineveh in the dark, unaware of the chance to change. By choosing to follow through, Jonah became the bridge between their despair and their salvation. In our own lives, we may often find ourselves questioning the impact of our actions, especially when the task seems overwhelming or the outcome uncertain. But Jonah's story teaches us that embracing our purpose can create opportunities for others to heal and change. It reminds us that even the most seemingly insignificant act can have far-reaching consequences. When we step into our purpose, we open the door for transformation, not just in ourselves, but in those we encounter. Our actions have the power to catalyze change in others, whether through our words, our actions, or the way we lead by example. The redemption of Nineveh demonstrates the far-reaching consequences of embracing our purpose. It wasn't just Jonah's personal transformation that mattered, it was the transformation that happened because he chose to fulfill his role. It shows that when we do the work we are meant to do, we create a ripple effect, one that touches lives, heals wounds, and offers the possibility of a better future. Just as Nineveh was redeemed, we have the power to bring healing and restoration to the world around us. Jonah's willingness to step into his purpose allowed him to become part of something bigger, a moment of change that transcended his own personal growth and extended to the community he was called to serve. Embracing our purpose isn't always easy, and it often requires us to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world. But when we step into our role with courage and faith, we create the space for healing, for redemption, and for transformation, not just in ourselves, but in the lives of others. The story of Jonah reminds us that our purpose is not just about us fulfilling a personal destiny. It's about being part of a greater plan, one that can bring change, healing, and hope to those around us. And that is the true power of embracing our purpose. As we reflect on Jonah's journey, we begin to understand that purpose isn't something we can outrun. We can try to avoid it, hide from it, or push it aside, but it will always find a way to catch up with us. Jonah's story shows us that the road to fulfilling our purpose may not be easy. It may involve struggle, discomfort, and moments of doubt, but it is through those very challenges that we find growth, healing, and ultimately, transformation. When we step into our calling, we not only transform ourselves, but also create opportunities for others to do the same. Purpose isn't just about us. It's about the impact we have on the world around us. The people we touch, the lives we change, and the ripples of our actions can bring about redemption and healing in ways we might never fully understand. So the question remains, are we willing to face our fears and embrace the purpose we are meant to fulfill? Will we answer the call no matter how daunting it may seem, knowing that by doing so we could change the course of our own lives and the lives of others? Jonah's journey teaches us that the real power lies in stepping forward, into the unknown, into the discomfort, and into the purpose that can ultimately set us free.